So in this video, I'm going to show you how to configure dynamic trunk. So the default configuration for a Cisco switch is to have DTP frames enabled. The switch ports themselves only have auto mode enabled. So if you have a link between switch 1 and switch 2, and the default mode is auto mode, that's not going to create a dynamic trunk. You need at least one of the switches to have desirable mode. So although DT frames are sent between the switches, there's no dynamic trunk created, since auto mode won't do that. What I've got here is layer 2 topology. I've got host 1 in VLAN 10, and server 1 in VLAN 10, and host 2 in VLAN 11, and server 2 in VLAN 11. So VLAN 10 can communicate with anything in its own VLAN, and same thing with VLAN 11. So the access ports are already configured. I'm just going to configure dynamic trunking between the switches. So I'll start with switch 1 FA21. This is interface FA21. There it is there, switch 1. So what I'm going to do is configure this interface with desirable mode for DTP. So as long as one of the interfaces is desirable mode, you can negotiate a dynamic trunk. Command is switch port mode dynamic desirable. The other thing I want to do is change the native VLAN from VLAN 1 to VLAN 999. This lab, I'm also going to allow all VLANs. That's a default for Cisco switches. I'm doing this just to show you the results on the show interfaces trunk command. So that's all done there. Now we'll go to switch 2. This will be the same interface FA21. This command is switch port mode dynamic auto. I don't actually have to do this command since this is the default as mentioned for Cisco switches. But I'm doing this just to show you the command. And this is used in case you change it to some other mode. You want to change it back to the default mode. This is the command you would use. The other thing I have to do is match the native VLAN that's on switch 1. If I don't, DTP will not work. That again is switch port trunk native VLAN 999. And the allowed VLANs have to match as well. So that's just the default of allowing all VLANs. So that I don't have to do any commands there. And that should do it. So let's do copy run to start. The other thing to note is if you ever want to turn off DTP or disable it, you can do that with two different methods. You can either configure an access port with switch port mode access, or you could do switch port no negotiate. Both those commands will change from a trunk to an access. We'll go back to switch 1 here. So what I'm going to do is run this show interfaces trunk command on both switches. There's specific information on both. Here on switch 1, port FA21, that's correct. That is the trunking port. Mode desirable, that's what I set it to. That's so it'll send DT frames to switch 2 and negotiate that dynamic trunk. Encapsulation 802.1q, N stands for negotiated. And trunking status, yeah. 999 is the native VLAN. You notice as well on FA21, all VLANs are allowed on the trunk. So that's all the VLANs available. You'll also get this VLANs allowed and active. And these are the VLANs that are configured, 1, 10, and 11. So that's what's active and currently configured on the access ports. The same command on switch 2. And here FA21 is the correct interface. So it's 2.1 there. And mode is auto. So that's the other mode for DTP. And the encapsulation is N802.1Q. That means it's DTP negotiated. It is trunking, and 999 is the correct native VLAN. And all VLANs allowed, and 110 and 11 are currently active. So now I'll just test from host 1 to server 1 and host 2 to server 2. Server 1 is 192.168.1.2. And that's working fine. And server 2 is 192.168.2.2. So we'll verify this doesn't work. That's going to time out, so that's working as expected, since that's a different VLAN. And I'll go to host 2 now, desktop. So this is to server 2, 192.168.2.2. And connectivity is working there. So try to VLAN 10. That's not going to work since it's a different VLAN. So that all confirmed that DTP is operational, and that concludes the video.